Thank you for being here so promptly and for joining us. And I would be calling anyone outside if they want to come in and join us. We're about to begin. Before we get into the formal part of the program, I want to introduce myself. My name is Debbie Tulang D. Silva, and I'm the Program Director for the Hawaii State Judiciary's Office on Equality and Access to the Courts. Our program at the Judiciary oversees access programs and providing equal access to our court customers, and one of the largest fields and areas that we work in is language access. It's a pleasure for me to be here in front of you amongst esteemed colleagues, friends, those I have seen over the years. It's so heartwarming to see us all together again after the pandemic. And for those of you that I have not yet met, I'm sure that we'll become colleagues as well. Before we begin, I do want to thank all of you for being here, taking time from your day to be with us today, but also recognize those that have traveled from the neighbor islands and beyond. If you could just take a brief moment to stand so that we can recognize you for traveling and being with us. We have quite a few. Wonderful, thank you. I do have some housekeeping matters to cover. If you haven't already, parking validation is being provided at the registration table. We will also be taking up your questions and we welcome them. There are index cards provided in your binders that you were provided this morning at registration. Please feel free to write your questions on there and then turn your cards into the registration table. We will have a session at the end of the day. If we haven't answered the questions along the way through our sessions, we will try to take them all up at the end. With regards to the restrooms, the men and women's restroom is just in the middle of this floor to your right. If you go down that hall, you'll find the restrooms there. You were also provided a program agenda today. I just briefly want to highlight some of those activities that are going to be happening. So we will have a morning and an afternoon break. We'll have a 15-minute break, and I'll guide you to those, as well as 2 breakout sessions, your choice of which to attend in our morning session, and then again in the afternoon at 1:30, we'll have 2 additional breakout sessions. Our lunch presentation will be at 12:30, and we are going to be having lunch in this ballroom, and then our breakout rooms are either in the Hibiscus Ballroom or the Grand Lanai Ballroom, which is on this floor as well. In addition to participating and engaging in our speakers today, if you do have to access Wi-Fi, you might want to jot down, you're looking for on your network, Ala Moana Meetings, and the password is lowercase ACCOR123. Yes. Again, that's Ala Moana Meetings, and the password is ACCOR, ACCOR 123. I do want to take a moment, because it's oftentimes forgotten, is to recognize all of the people that have put in their hard work to make today possible. I do want to take a moment to recognize the Executive Director of the Office of Language Access, Afarak Bamrungren. And his hardworking staff that may still be working out there that are also present. Wei, Ed, Danelle. You can have a chance. They were at the registration table and they've been running around to make this possible. In addition to them, I would like to recognize the Office of Language Access Advisory Council and the Planning Committee that has put this conference together. So for those of you that are present in the room, if you could please stand so that we can applaud you for your hard work and planning. Thank you. So our conference today, Language Access, navigating towards a new normal. According to the Urban Dictionary, the definition of new normal is the current state of being after some dramatic change has transpired. What replaces the expected, usual, typical state after an event occurs. The new normal encourages one to deal with current situations rather than lamenting what could have been. In a recent article published in the Journal of Public Health, in the face of crisis, we need to improvise, adapt, and overcome. The new normal is still emerging. Our immediate focus should be to tackle the complex problems that have emerged from our crises that we've experienced by highlighting what is being referred to as the new 3 Rs: resilience, recovery, and restructuring. Cultural theorists argue that there is an interplay between culture and both personal feelings of powerlessness and information consumption during time of crises. Nonetheless, it's up to us. It's up to us to adapt to the challenges of current pandemics and similar crises, especially one that the state of Hawaii is going through now. And whether we respond positively or negatively can greatly affect our personal and social lives. Indeed, there are many lessons we learn from crises that can be used in building a better society. How we deal with change will depend on our capacity to adapt, to manage resilience in the face of adversity, our flexibility and creativity. Many might argue that there may be little to gain from crises, especially the pain that we go through such traumatic experiences, such as the crippling effects and impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and the devastation of the Maui wildfires. But it is important that we keep in mind and timely that we meet today to study language access and how we can provide better, so that we keep in mind that no one is being left behind. Because when such crises are over, the best of our new normal will survive, and it will survive to enrich our lives and our work in the future. So we thank you all for being here as we navigate and discuss our new normal in the area of language access. I do want to take a moment of silence to remember our brothers and sisters that are in despair on our neighbor island, our sister island, Maui. So if we could just bow our heads and have our thoughts be with them to come to a place of blessings and gratitude. We're grateful that we're alive, we're safe, we're here today, but there are so many in our community that are scared and fearful and in despair. And we want to give and channel our positive energies towards them and support them as well as we meet today to try to talk about things that will also better their future. Thank you. We are so blessed to introduce, I am so blessed to introduce the next person who is going to set the stage for us and give us blessings as well as we move forward today. Johanna Chalk Tam is the judiciary's first OLA Hawaii Program Administrator. She's responsible for increasing the presence of the Hawaiian language throughout the judiciary. As an attorney, she has been awarded and recognized for her advocacy work, not only in the legal settings, but also in the educational settings. As a cultural practitioner, Johanna has ritually elevated to the status of Olapa. Olapa of Ka Pahula o Kalelehua by her Kumu Snowbird Bento. And as an OLA student of Kekuhi Keali'i Kanaka Ole. Johanna holds a Juris Doctor degree from the William S. Richardson School of Law and her MBA from Chaminade University and BA in Hawaiian language from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Johanna.
O nana kala me kale hua e halele hua no yanaka no e o ka no ia no inei e anei ho yo kai ki mai ai mai no o ko ai pu me ke aloha 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 aloha.
Thank you so much, Johanna. Now at this time, I would like to recognize and call upon our welcome address speakers, Afarak Bamaringuin, as we all know as AP, and Tarina Wong. Tarina Wong is the Deputy Director of the Pacific Gateway Center and is actively involved with programs and initiatives that empower immigrants, refugees, and low-income residents of Hawaii. Tarina directs ESL programs across the state and teaches ESL weekly to immigrant farmers and their families in Kunia. She is bilingual in English and French, having lived and studied in France and being active with the French community in Hawaii. Her family has been a host family to an array of language students, including students from China, East-West Center students, Bangladesh, Egypt, India, Indonesia, and more. Tarina has her master's degree in education from the University of Hawaii and has been a committed educator for over 25 years in the teaching and learning of global issues and social and world cultures. Because of her work at the Pacific Gateway Center, she is now living global issues, having acquired many firsthand experiences dealing with immigrants and refugees, human rights, violations such as human trafficking, and helping those who have been marginalized. AP Bamrimgoen from the Office of Language Access has been the Executive Director since May 2017. As the agency's head, AP oversees and manages the development and implementation of the agency's systems, programs, budget, policies, and procedures designed to service language access needs of Hawaii's limited English proficient population. Prior to AP's role at the Office of Language Access, he served as the LEP project manager at the Hawaii Department of Human Services, was also an investigator at the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission, and a staff attorney at the Volunteer Legal Services Hawaii, as well as the Domestic Violence Action Center. AP received his Bachelor of Law at Thammasat University in Thailand and his Master of Law and Juris Doctor from the University of Hawaii, William S. Richardson School of Law. Tarina and AP.
Aloha. Pardon me. Aloha and good morning. This has been a disheartening 2 weeks, and we send our prayers and aloha to all of Maui, and especially to families whose loved ones perished in the fire or who may still be missing. However, we've pulled together as a community to work in partnership towards Maui's relief and recovery. And we hope this conference will educate and enlighten you as we navigate together towards a new normal in language access. The fires on Maui, as well as the recent pandemic, bring into immediate question, what are we learning? or have learned about how our nation, our state, our counties, and our community are responding to the acute needs of our limited English proficient community to ensure equitable access to programs and services. How are we using this crisis as a learning opportunity and growing from it?
And I would like to take opportunity for today because we have a conference on language access. So I just want to highlight the need of the language access during the disaster. I have been on the call almost every day for an update about the situation on Maui, and I have seen that one of the main issue, I would say, the primary concern for our impact LEP community is the lack of information in their native languages. We see that evidently from everywhere. Not too many information that disseminate in their language. And we all know during this critical time, sharing information from the trusted source is very important. Like I said earlier, it's evident little or if any information that have been provided in a language that people would understand, whether in the written forms that we disseminating or even something, we know in this current world, people communicate through social media, using different type of media or radio or TV. We do not have much information to share with our LEP community. So in turn, many of our LEP community have turned into family, friends, just to relay the information. Sorry, I just so excited. Because many of them have to rely on friends and family to relay this information to them. So now, even we think about it as an English speaker, even the English information, English messages that they provided during this critical time, many of them is not easy to understand. Sometimes we have to reread it and try to think it, what are they trying to say. Some of them is really complicated. Some of them we don't even need it to have in there. So it's nice to have, but it's not need to have. So this doesn't help. Instead of giving people an answer, now you're just giving them more puzzle to figure out what they really need, what they have to do. So it's very important for us. So we need to do better as the what they call trusted source who provide services or provide information to the LEP. We should check our messages to make sure everyone can understand. We not just talk about LEP, but we just talk about everyone. LEP might be 11% in our state, but when you have a clear messages, everyone, the 100% people will understand and make it translatable. We have a lot of interpreter, translator who work in this room. So you know some concepts, some word is not translatable. When you make it too complicated, the meaning is changed. People cannot put the meaning together and it make it hard, it make it confused. Sometimes it do more harm than good to our LEP community. And using the plain and simple word that we will hear from our keynote speaker today, it's not just a nice thing to do. It's a must. That's why we have to put out the information that everyone needs to understand. And also, one thing I would say, I know we have a lot of government agency working here, but you know, as the Office of Language Access, we have to ensure meaningful access to everyone. Many of you might have heard or even said yourself that, oh, we do not have funding, we do not have resource in providing services to our LEP community. I just want to remind everyone that language access is not an unfunded mandate. So it's thing that once you accept funding from the government, either state or federal, you have legal obligation to provide services to LEP community, and you have to ensure language access for those in need. It should be viewed as operating expense. So now, it's not just something that afterthought. It's part of the operational that you should put it in, just plan ahead, budgeting, because we all know here, language access in terms of interpretation, translation, it's not cheap. It's expensive, but it's a must. It's a need that everyone need to prepare, need to budgeting as part of your operating budget. And also keep in mind that why many of our LEP community want to help our people, want to help people who speak the same languages. But we, as a state fund or state agency, cannot just shift that responsibility back to the community. It's still yours who receive federal fund and government state fund to provide language services to OLEP because it is your legal obligation. So just keep in mind when we talk about funding, you run the program because you get the funding from state and federal. So language access is part of your operating. It should be line item, just should budget it out so we know how to plan and how to prepare just in case of emergency like this. My co-presenter going to talk more.
Thank you, AP. We also know that we need sustained education, reinforcement, and a collective commitment on the mandate of language access. It is the law that lead to effective, sustained implementation. This needs to start from the top and in coordination with state language access coordinators, monitoring and evaluating language access plans. In times of disaster, our entire community and its respective agencies and entities must be prepared with a united, cohesive plan with protocols, contracts, and procedures in place and understood, with an implementation checklist ensuring communications in multiple languages, ready to spring into action, ensuring, as Debbie said, no one is left behind, especially those who are disproportionately at risk. The Maui fires signaled the urgent need for a statewide coordinated response, identification of all agency vital information, a site for centralized digitized language service resources for immediate direct access by the community, a repository of translated documents to avoid duplication, trained multilingual community navigators for immediate access to support by the victims, sharing and posting of timely written and video multilingual materials, and optimizing the use of social media to share accurate information in language. We're very excited to share with you that in the offing, there will be a multilingual hotline that will be available with interpreters so that victims of the Maui fire will have immediate access to an interpreter with good information and referrals. We'd like to thank the funding that was made available by the Office of Community Services with the state of Hawaii that funded this hotline, as well as the reestablishment of the immigration resource centers that are statewide to support language access efforts. Concerted efforts also are in place to build capacity, to recruit, train, and retain more interpreters and translators. The urgent need, as you know, is for interpreters and translators in the language groups that reflect the demographics of our limited English proficient population. We must recognize the value of bilingual and multilingual employees. A certification program has become available at Kapiolani Community College, and language service providers are playing key roles in training. The Office of Language Access has developed free quarterly workshops for those interested in becoming interpreters and translators. Training is ongoing and needed by requesting entities on how to work with interpreters. The Hawaii State Judiciary has a well-recognized, viable training program. Organizations such as Safe Haven are working with high school students, fluent in their heritage languages as well as English, to understand the value of the role of language access to ensure equity, as well as careers in the field. Interpreters and translators also become a rich pool for much-needed bilingual community navigators. And of course, embedded in building capacity is the need for more funding, for training, for scholarships to support the training, for language services, and for initiatives supporting our LEP communities. We also are engaging in culturally sensitive outreach, knowing that our immigrant and LEP groups acquire information and respond to disasters in different ways, guided by their norms and values. It's about creating trusting relationships. And finally, we need to express gratitude to so many nonprofits and nonprofits, and organizations that are advocating each day for language access.
And for me, your presence today is very important to me as the head of the Office of Language Access, as well as the son of immigrant, or a person like me who use English as my second language. I truly appreciate your interest in coming in understanding about the language access. Whether this is your first time attending a conference on language access or have been working on the language issue for a long time, there is always something new to learn. The world is changing, the technology is coming, language access is evolving, it has a life on its own. So I hope that today conference will inspire some of you, or it's also reaffirm your commitment to the language access. So let's have a productive conference day today. Welcome everyone, thank you.
Thank you, AP and Serena. Inspire. That's such a powerful word. In the safe space today, I hope that you are opening your minds and your hearts to be inspired and also to take what you learned today to inspire others. I would like now to introduce another esteemed individual amongst us. Erica Moritsugu was appointed by President Joe Biden in April 2021 to serve as Deputy Assistant to the President and Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander Senior Liaison. At the White House, Erica supports the administration on a wide array of the President's priorities and supports the administration on engaging with AA, Asian Americans, and Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islander communities and leaders on important issues. Issues such as advancing safety, justice, inclusion, and opportunity for Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities through a whole of government approach to racial justice. Erica's past government service includes serving as the Assistant Secretary for Congressional and Intergovernmental Relations at the Department of Housing and Urban Development under the leadership of Secretary Julian Castro in the Obama administration. And she was also the first ever Senate Deputy Legislative Director at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. On Capitol Hill, Erica, she was a senior representative of Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois and Senator Daniel Akaka from our home state of Hawaii, and at the State Senate Democratic Policy Committee under Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid of Nevada. In the nonprofit sector, Erica managed two teams, the National Partnership for Women and Families for Economic Justice and Congressional Relations, advancing workforce and health policies focused through a gender equity and race equity lens. Erica has also led the Governmental Relations, Advocacy, and Community Engagement team at the Anti-Defamation League, which included leading their interreligious and interfaith work. Erica is a proud graduate of the University Laboratory School in Honolulu, Hawaii, and attended Brandeis University, the College of William and Mary, and George Washington University Law School. Born in California and raised in Hawaii, Erica lives on Capitol Hill with her husband, Brian, and their two children. We are so grateful and we feel so valued to have Erica with us today. Erica?
Debbie, thank you. That introduction was maybe a little bit longer than my remarks today. It's because I'm old. But good morning, y'all. Hafade, Tiro, Talofa, Malualele, Sawadika, Aloha. Thank you, Executive Director Bamarungan, Tarina Wong, for your leadership in putting this together today. Debbie, for your spirited, inspirational, and elegant moderation, and Johanna, for the beautiful and powerful OLA. Distinguished guests also, including White House Presidential Advisory Commission, Amy Agbayani, who we'll hear from later today. On behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, mahalo nui loa for the generous invitation to join you this morning. Before I begin, I'd like to hold a moment of silence, to send healing and strength to our sisters and brothers on Maui. Mahalo. As you all know, President Biden has made equity and racial justice a day one priority of his administration. Literally on day one, he signed his first executive order, and it was on racial equity. This historic mandate charged the entire federal government to tackle the challenges that generations of discrimination, exclusion, and disinvestment cause for communities across our nation. We know, however, that the fight for equity is not a one-day project or a one-week project or a one-year project or a two-year project. The president has said it himself. It's a generational commitment, and we aren't taking our foot off the gas. Under this first order on equity, President Biden tasked agencies with changing the way they do business. Debbie, this is the new normal, right? Ensuring that equity is at the forefront of all of our work. It's a whole of government endeavor, and as a result, agencies assess their high-impact services to uncover where systemic barriers may exist. Last April, 90 agencies used the findings to produce more than 300 new strategies to support underserved communities across the nation. And this last February, the president signed a second executive order on racial equity and support for underserved communities to further that commitment, despite coordinated national attacks on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility programs. So with respect to language access, which is part of the core of our equity agenda nationwide, and also for our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, no matter where they reside, I'm going to delve into 5 ways that the Biden-Harris administration has and is demonstrating our commitment to equity and language access and language preservation through the Department of Justice, the President's Advisory Commission on Asian American, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders, the White House Initiative on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders, general language preservation efforts, and of course, the Maui wildfire recovery efforts. First, I'm sure that you all saw that just 2 weeks ago, the Department of Justice released its updated language access plan with a new guide aiming to ensure that all individuals can fully participate in the department's programs, activities, and services. When it was released, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said that, quote, language barriers should not stand in the way of access to government services. This updated language access plan is an important step toward ensuring that everyone can report crimes, access important resources, and seek help from the Department of Justice when they need it. The language access plan provides guidance to the Department of Justice offices to help them understand the needs of communities with limited English proficiency, improve translation and interpretation services, provide quality assurance of those services, and expands the range of tools available to serve the public. The Office for Access to Justice led the development of the department's updated plan, working with the department's Language Access Working Group and the Civil Rights Division. This work is a part of the Office of Access to Justice and the working group's broader leadership of departmental efforts to expand language access resources, improve awareness of language access issues, and provide training and technical assistance to other offices within the Department of Justice and across the federal government. The Access to Justice Director, Rachel Rossi, had said it perfectly. Quote, access to justice means language access. Through the updated policies in this language access plan, we recommit to expanded language access as a central component of all department programs and activities. Now, turning to another bucket of work with my partners in this work, the Presidential Advisory Commission on Asian American Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, and the White House Initiative on AN and HPIs. In May of 2021, President Biden signed an executive order, and it's numbered 14031 for the bureaucratic geeks in the crowd, to reestablish and expand the work of the Commission and the initiative. Now, the Commission is comprised of 25 leaders in community and includes 2 cabinet members, Catherine Tai, our ambassador and a cabinet member at USTR, and Secretary of Health and Human Services, Javier Becerra. They were appointed to advise the President on uplifting the AAN and HPI community through its policy recommendations. Amongst her many leadership roles and the many hats that she wears, the indefatigable Dr. Amy Agbayani, who is here today, serves as a commissioner and chairs the Language Access Committee for the Commission. Crystal Ka'ai is the director of both the Commission and the initiative. She's making history too. She's the first Hawaiian to serve in this historic role. And the initiative manages an interagency working group and a regional network to create an all of governments, national in scope, but locally driven approach to strengthening language access and addressing data disaggregation gaps to identify and understand disparities in the federal government, including in language access and language preservation. The interagency working group is composed of senior level executive branch officials designated by their respective agencies and offices to coordinate the initiative's work across the federal government, breaking down those silos that have kind of stymied us or duplicated efforts or left gaps. Its directive includes ending language access barriers faced by AN and HPI communities in accessing government benefits and services. The regional network includes over 300 members in the 10 federal regions, representing dozens of federal agencies. This network builds relationships between the federal government and our AN and HPI community members and leaders by coordinating outreach efforts and connecting community stakeholders with federal resources. And this includes, of course, language access efforts to ensure equity. Details on specific language access plans and progress reports for agencies are found in the White House's first ever strategy to promote safety, justice, and equity for AN and HPI communities, and that was just released in January of this year, along with the May initiative progress report. Now, one of the hallmarks of President Biden's commitment to indigenous peoples is language preservation, again, the new normal. In January of this year, President Biden signed into law 2 bipartisan bills authored by U.S. Senator Brian Schatz of Hawaii. He serves in many of his roles as the chair of the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, which was the same seats that our beloved Senator Kaka, my former boss, held back in the day. So let me just preview the law that's being implemented now, the 2 laws. The Native American Language Resource Center Act establishes Native language resource centers across the country with the capacity to create grants and other forms of support to organizations that perpetuate Native languages. The Durbin Feeling Native American Languages Act aims to review the aid offered by federal agencies to ensure that updated, well-coordinated efforts that best support the revitalization of Native languages. These new laws combine support Native language education at all levels, encouraging the use of Native languages, including OLA Hawaii, as a medium of instruction in schools, offering resources, the use of technology in teaching, and supporting teacher certification and training. And thanks to the incredible work already done here in Hawaii, the preservation of OLA Hawaii has served as a model for our indigenous sisters and brothers in Alaska, the lower 48, and our territories. Now, I look across this beautiful room, and I know that you've been in this work for a long time. So I'm guessing that many of you are cautious in your optimism, and I don't blame you. I know I'm preaching to the choir. Equity in language access has been in the works for decades. I have spent my entire adult professional life on these issues, and I'm kind of old, so that's a long time. But before I go any further, I'd like to note a trigger warning as I briefly touch on an example of coordinated language access work that's being done for Maui and Hawaii Island. So I'll give folks a little bit of time if you need it. At the start of my remarks, I mentioned that President Biden is tasking agencies with changing the way they do business, ensuring that equity is at the forefront of their work. Here's one example, an important and recent example of the way the federal government has changed its ways. As wildfires began ripping through Maui and as the gravity, scope, deadliness, and complexity of the crisis grew, our colleagues from the White House and across the agencies have asked about cultural sensitivities and protocols and language access needs. So at the onset, materials were translated into OLA Hawaii, and from there, materials were translated into Spanish, Shukis, Ilocano, Tagalog, Tongan, Korean, Japanese. I cannot say enough about the incredible all-hands-on-deck coordination that continues to occur to this day and will continue. Among this is the heartwarming and inclusive approach from the White House and our colleagues throughout the departments and agencies of genuinely wanting to understand history and culture and language needs to ensure that we meet the need versus the need changing to meet the way we offer support, or have historically offered support, to do things right, the Pono way. And it's not just about translating from English to some list of the top 5 AN and HPI languages according to the national census. To make a true difference, we must also understand that we need data disaggregation so that we can provide support based on the community's needs. And we can't support the community's needs unless we're actually seeing the community, we're measuring them, and this is not just some geeky data point. These data points, data disaggregation represents people, and that means that our policies can be based on people and be impactful for the people that we mean to center in our policies. We need cultural competency and data disaggregation to tailor to the needs of impacted communities. A few examples of meeting needs where they are. Lahaina and Kula have different populations and different language needs than, let's say, New Orleans East after devastating floods, or Monterey Park, California after a devastating mass shooting. By knowing who resides where, we will know what languages to translate into, who the best messengers are, and what the best medium of written translations and online services will be to post and share. The needs of immigrants and migrants are also unique. Knowledge and respect of cultural protocols are key. So in short, we need to make sure it's not just what we say, but also about who says it and how we deliver those messages. We continue to work on a multifaceted approach. And these are just a few examples of President Biden's approach to equity. We'll send AP some examples of what I've just talked about as a follow-up for y'all. My friends, we're focused on implementation to make sure that our equity agenda delivers for all American people, including underserved communities, and that includes our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders. On the executive level, agencies are currently drafting their next round of equity action plans and commitments, and it's going to include an update on the progress made to date by the agencies on the actions, performance measures, and milestones highlighted in their first equity action plan, as well as new strategies and actions to create impact in how agencies are working to make a difference in people's lives. AP, thank you. Kapkunka, for you and your tiny muscular team, for all that you're doing for the state of Hawaii and pulling together this amazing conference, and it's an honor to be here today. I look forward to working with you, and as Senator Akaka taught me and many of us here, we will try every step of the way to lead with aloha. Mahalo nui loa for allowing me to share this space with you today.
Thank you so much, Erica. Such a touching presentation for us. For many of us that have worked in this area, it's true, we've been doing it for years, and often sometimes are dismayed by our efforts and not really seeing the fruits of what we think and the advancements of what we feel should be done. And oftentimes in our circles of discussion, we'll say, well, we need support from the top. And I think by Erica's presentation to us and sharing with us the work that they're doing on Capitol Hill, I would say that we have support from the top. And it's going to give us that much more inspiration for what we do, knowing that they get it. Oftentimes when we're talking to administrators and those that sit in higher positions to support what we do on the ground, we sometimes scratch our heads and say, well, do they get it? I think Capitol Hill gets it. And I think that will motivate us to continue the good fight and do what we do every day. I now want to bring up Dr. Amy Agbayani. And there's often a mother team or a founding team behind a lot of what is done in a state. And in the area of language access, you will always hear Amy Agbayani's name. And we are so grateful for all of the efforts and all of the advancement that she's done in this area. Dr. Amy Agbayani is an Emeritus Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Diversity and Equity at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Amy was born in the Philippines and received her education from the University of the Philippines East-West Center and the University of Hawaii. She is a former chair of the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission and conducts research on Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders in higher education, and is a board member of the Patsy Mink PAC and the Legal Clinic focused on immigrant justice in Hawaii. It's always been my pleasure to be in the same room with Amy, and I'm so glad that she is able to join us and speak to us today. As Amy makes her way up here to continue the note on support from the top, unfortunately, Governor Green was scheduled to be with us this morning, and of course, in the wake of the Maui wildfires, there's a lot of priority work that needs to be done, so he was unable to make it. But we do have special letters and support from not only Governor Green, Mayor Rick Blangiardi, U.S. Senator Brian Schatz, Congressman Ed Case, as well as the State Department of Health Director Kenneth Fink. And those are provided on the Office of Language Access website. So we have a lot of backing today.
Thank you, Debbie. Aloha, everybody. It's a real honor to be here, and we do recognize really the gravity of the situation in Lahaina, and that also means that Governor Green was not able to come and listen to many of the issues that he had already agreed to come, but he was unable to join us today. Thank you too to Erica and the organizers for inviting me to this conference. And so I had to organize my speech fairly quickly, and I have a big paper clip here to keep so that my speech is put together. I tried to organize my little brief presentation today on the conference, which is on communication. So the word C came up a lot. C is for communication and language and culture and sensitivity, and this conference is about that. And I want to also talk a little bit about the commission, President Biden's commission that I am on. And then I will talk about context a bit about the history and demographics of our state and Lahaina and language. And then I'll finally talk about civil rights, another C, and that Hawaii's history has long been determined, really, and Hawaii's future will also be determined by issues of language. So for those of you who, as I mentioned, I am on the commission, and I volunteered to be co-chair of the Language Access Committee of the commission, and we have 6 committees, one on language access, which I'm co-chair, another one on immigration and citizenship, one on data disaggregation, another committee on health and equity, economic equity, and finally, a subcommittee on belonging, inclusion, and anti-hate. So we meet quarterly, and I have 90-minute Zooms many times a week with the commission. I'd like to also recognize two other commissioners from Hawaii. One is Michelle Kwahani, and the other one is Daniel Day Kim. So, as I mentioned, language is a real part of our human characteristics, but also a part of Hawaii's history. So Hawaiian language and immigrant languages are really very, very important in talking about Hawaii. As all of you know, Hawaiian was the primary language of all native Hawaiians at the time of the US annexation in 1898, and during the Hawaiian monarchy, Hawaiian was used for daily native life, as well as for government activities and in the schools. The United States imposed compulsory use of English in all these fields, and children were punished for using Hawaiian in public and boarding schools. And so Hawaiian became an endangered language. However, in 1978, the Constitution was revised, and Hawaiian was identified and recognized as an official language. And in 1983, a grassroots group called Punanaleo started its language immersion schools. And today, at one time we only had 2,000 speakers. Today we have many, many more speakers who came through the Hawaiian language immersion schools, and also the University of Hawaii. But my focus, though, will be on the farm languages spoken in Hawaii, and it was part of our plantation history. As you know, the percentage of farm-born in the United States is 14%, but here in Hawaii, it's over 18%. And that means 1 out of 5 residents in our state is immigrant. And they come from and they live in all islands. Oahu, 75% of our immigrants, Maui, 12%, Hawaii Island, 7%, and Kauai, 5%. And all of you probably know, but let me repeat that the immigrants from the Philippines represent the largest country of origin, making up nearly 46% of all immigrants. And more recent immigrant groups such as Mexicans, Vietnamese, and Micronesians make up a sizable share of the farm-born population. Then want to talk, so that's sort of the context for the state of Hawaii in terms of immigrants. In terms of Lahaina, it's the only place in all of Hawaii that has been a significant place during every era of Hawaii's history: pre-contact, whaling, monarchy, missionary, plantation, and tourism. They all brought different people here to join the Hawaiian community. According to the recent US Census Bureau data, 74% of Lahaina's population is civilian, and the data also shows that the median income there is $80,000, which is much lower than the state household income of $88,000. Additionally, 32% of Lahaina's residents are foreign-born, compared with 18% statewide. And a language other than English is spoken at home in 36% of Lahaina families, compared with 26% for Hawaii overall. And the data shows that Filipinos comprise 40% of the population in Lahaina. Let's see. Also, I would just like to recognize the fact that Local 5, Unite Here Local 5, is the union for Ala Moana Hotel, and they have nearly 1,000 members in Lahaina, and we're in touch with them. And most of them, again, happen to be immigrant, with a large percentage being Filipino. So the next C that I was going to talk about was civil rights. Language access is a civil right. And so let me give you a little bit of data on the and context. 77% of the immigrants say they speak English well or very well, but more than 1 in 4 residents of the state speak a language other than English at home. And most, and as all of you also know, speakers of a non-English language typically earn 10% to 34% less than English-only speakers. Again, the most commonly spoken statewide are Tagalog, Japanese, Ilocano, Spanish, Hawaiian, and also our Micronesian and Pacific Island languages. As I mentioned before, language has been a real big part of Hawaii's history, and it's a big part of Hawaii's civil rights history. Many years ago, a number of people in this room, including Pat McManus, my seatmate over there, and others with the Naloyo organization, took on a case to say that Mr. Fragante, who scored the highest out of 750 people and never hired, was discriminated against because of his accent. We lost the case, but we won something. What we won was the establishment of the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission. What we won were stronger laws and expanded protection. So I'll finish now by talking about civil rights. It is a right to be treated equally, to get information equally. And today is August 29th, and yesterday was August 28th, 60 years anniversary of the March to Washington, D.C. So what we had to do is not only celebrate the fact that Martin Luther King and the African American community led the fight for civil rights, but we have to also make sure we make changes and implement the Civil Rights Commission's mandate and our aspirations. So thank you for joining us today, and what we have to do is make sure that we make people accountable for implementing this mandate and really reaching out to every member of our community. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you again, Amy, for leading the way so many years ago and for continuing to lead us as we navigate through these difficult waters.